Hi, we are so glad to be back with everyone. Today we are talking about Yay for Easy Assessment because let's face it, assessment is a huge part of what we do in the classroom. Constantly checking for mastery and checking for areas where kids need to keep improving. We're kind of in a fun situation today. Elaine is live from the HOSA competition on the east side of Indy. So she's in a different location, but it's kind of fun because it's an extension of what she does here at school every day, and getting to compete with the kids and watch them really prove. And really, it's kind of an assessment in and of itself, what they've learned, like a culminating event of everything they've learned this year. So we cannot wait to take it away with you and talk easy assessment.
All right.
As we get started, Elaine, take it away. And anything else you want to share about where you are?
Yeah, so I've taken 60 students, 9th through 12th grade. We've got a mixture. We are at the HOSA state convention today. The HOSA is an international club for kids interested in a healthcare occupation. And so they come, it's a leadership conference. They come and they prepare speeches and they compete. And it's a really neat conference, and you really see the kids grow just as people and as leaders. And so we've brought 60 kids down, and it kind of gets launched tonight. And so it was kind of fun that it landed on our YaySTEM night. Tonight's topic we want to talk about was assessment. And, assessment, grades. Is it the same as assessment? And I absolutely believe these are not even close to the same. Being able to grade a paper, to give them a quiz and give them some arbitrary number does not tell me what my kids can do. What we are actually doing here is a better indicator of my kids' abilities, their knowledge. And I've never to this day in 19 years of teaching graded a paper that shows life skills, that shows their leadership, that shows their ability to solve problems. So to me, the grade is not the end all. It is very hard with high school because it is so important to them, their GPA. But I really tried to build in my room that you're more than your grades. So what do you think there, Dayna?
Well, I totally agree. I think it's what they can do with their application of the skills that they're gaining, and showing me that through maybe projects that we're doing or some, small assessments that are so informal. One thing that I do on a regular basis, every student has a small paddle dry erase board, and there's a picture of that as we go into our next slide, of them just showing me the answer. And right away, I can scan the room and know who knows what time it is. What is the time that we're asking? If I'm doing mountain math in class, if we're reviewing reading school skills, or we are showing how to spell a word, that kind of thing, they're all engaged because they're all answering at the same time. It's right at their fingertips, and I'll say, please show me. And they just hold up their board and show me that answer. So that informal piece is so great. And then that way I know who to enrich and remediate as well. It's not just a paper pencil type thing, but then they think it's fun because they're the ones who are doing it. As we go into the next slide, another idea is sticky notes. That can be just having sticky notes at their table, or giving them a sticky note as they enter the room to answer that day's question. Or if we're working on vocab skills like I did on the middle here, last week we were visiting the seasons, and each group had 5 different words, and they had to discuss and collaborate as a group. Where would those words go? And so then I could already see, can they read those type of words? Are they knowing the meaning of those words? If they didn't know the meaning, some of my kids were Googling it. They got out their computer, figured out what that probably meant. That's a first grader figuring how to problem solve a meaning of a word that they didn't know in order to stick it up on the board. Then we had a small discussion at our morning meeting. What do these words mean? How do they pertain to spring, summer, winter, fall? Could I move some of those words to go in with another season and why. So we are discussing and collaborating. We can do that with a Jamboard. If you haven't used Jamboard, it's any grade can use Jamboard. All of us use Jamboard on various topics, how to show what we've gained. When as an assessment, what our students have gained. On the right there, my students have used Jamboard to tell about what a word means. They put the word, or like problem solver. That student wanted to talk about what a problem solver is. They found their own picture or image to showcase that to the students. And then as we shared each other's jam, then everyone got to know the meaning of the words that each student had. Then also with Jam, it's in the Google waffle, so they can email it to each other, share it, and then everybody in the group can work on the project together. So my students had to come up with a timeline. They had 4 different choices in order to do a timeline with a partner, none of which was drawing a timeline on a paper. They had 4 different forms of technology to use. They could choose whatever they wanted. They worked together. They sent each other the jam, and they all added to it. And that was a timeline about Michael Jordan that the students created together. And they had to research, find out information about Michael Jordan by reading books on Epic. And then they did sticky notes together to find out, to tell what they've learned about him. And then you can have you can send it in your Google Classroom, a jam for everybody to feed off of, and sticky note their ideas if you don't want to do it paper-wise.
Hey,
Another
Dayna,
thing,
we did jam right before break in human body systems. We did the same thing. We did a timeline, and those are 10th to 12th graders. Really neat way that we could teach each other different things. We put different panels for the different time parts. And so that jam for everybody out there, Dayna taught me about jams. She's first grade and I'm 9 to 12. And so it's a great tool.
And then one thing also that I do to try to engage everyone is everyone has vocab cards. I ask questions, they hold them up, or we do showdown where everybody has whatever the vocab or sight words or spelling words that we have for the week. We have math facts, whatever. They put them in front of them, and then everybody's holding it up, showing the information that they've gained. And then I already know who knows what those words mean, what reading rules we've covered that they gained. Karisa shown me, was kind of mentioning how she jumped on Do Ink, and I was really excited to try it out. And I tried it out last week with first graders. Now, her kids were already right away editing and showing what they knew on a topic on their own through the app. But the app was very simple. I had 2 adults and 2 green screens going. My kids kind of told how they want to edit their work, and then they work together with an adult. But I think next time they could just work together in groups and figure it out. And that's a 7 and 6-year-old working on an app to showcase what they've gained on information that they acquired on a subject. And then another idea that you might want to use to show how your students have learned is, I have jumped on Tin Man Press. It's a group that has provided worksheets, which I'm not like the biggest fan, but these worksheets are so awesome. They have small lines drawn and different phrases or words underneath to build vocabulary. Well, some of those don't pertain to what I'm teaching, so I kind of just make my own now. And for summer, winter, fall, I just put those words out. I usually put our vocab words for the week, and then it's they draw based on the lines that are there, and use higher order thinking skills to try to figure out how to showcase that vocabulary word and what they know about it. And then they share it with others. And then we talk about were there really good details in order for us to know what you were talking about. Sometimes we draw one and then rotate. And so they draw on each other's paper, but then they're showcasing what they know, and then others can come back and add to it. So, Karisa, how have you used Do Ink with your students?
We used it that one time when they were doing the project, where they had to create a sweater that their favorite character would wear. And the sweater had to really symbolize things about the character that were known, or maybe, had to be drawn through conclusions. And then they wore their sweater through the app with the green screen, and they had to learn how to layer. So they had to learn what is in the back layer and what's the next layer and what's the forward layer. But it was just a fun way for them to take a project they created and really be a part of the project. And so we have all these little pictures of kids wearing their sweaters that they created. So we use that. I'm glad it worked well for your class. One thing that you said that I loved is that kids started Googling what a word meant. And it's a life skill, right? We use it all the time as adults. If someone mentions something, I'm like, oh, I don't know anything about that. I'm going to look it up, right? I'm going to look it up on my phone. If, I go to the doctor and I hear something new that, maybe there's a new disease, or there's someone in my family that's afflicted with something, I'm not going to wait for someone to teach me about it. I'm going to look it up and research it on my own. And so we're really teaching life skills when we allow those things to happen in the classroom. Mm-hmm. Upper elementary, I hope through all of these live streams and our conversations, it just becomes very apparent that no more is it, well, she does that in first grade, that doesn't apply to me. Because I think as we go through these slides, we're doing very similar things in fourth grade and at the upper elementary that Dayna's doing in first grade, that Elaine's doing with her high schoolers. And these are just some snippets of some of my favorites, and I think all of our favorites that we use. Using Flip to demonstrate knowledge and mastery, and using Canva to come up with projects. What a superior product. We talk about that all the time. And these products that are available free to educators and to students. Creating apps with something as simple as Google Slides. I mean, it's very simple coding, but what the kids create is pretty amazing. Jamboard, like we just used that recently when we were walking through a coding project. We started with just understanding that coding is giving very specific directions, and that if you don't give specific directions, things are not coded the right way, right? And we see how that applies in our life. And using computers, giving someone directions for how to get to your house and making sure you're very specific. And just how, I love this bottom left picture, and I come back to it all the time because it is my student in Washington, D.C. with a park ranger that we've only had virtual experiences with. But, extending the learning, it's all beyond the grade. He's not learning trying to get the grade. He's not learning just to pass the test and move on. It's like what we've talked about, where kids are now driven outside the walls of your classroom. They're not just trying to pass your class. They're so passionate about finding more answers and digging deeper. And it's not about the grade anymore. The grades will come, right? We know as adults, the grades will come. We talked in kind of our pre-talk before our live stream that we weren't all great test takers. If someone only took me based off of my test scores, I may not be a professional. I may not be an educator. But thankfully, we're more than how we score on standardized tests and more than how we score on tests in day-to-day life. So I just love all of these platforms and really just sampling them and making it novel in the classroom. And it does become contagious when you start fiddling with one and realizing, oh my gosh, now for the next presentation, they can build an app on Canva and then present it via Flip. I mean, the smashing of apps together, right? Being able to use things simultaneously is pretty awesome. Elaine, you had some awesome experience with that recently in your students.
Yes. And so here's the thing with high school, especially moving into high school, especially middle schools that have kids taking high school level courses. We absolutely battle with our kids that their GPA is not the end all. They are dominated. We have students that are dominated by this, that they don't want to learn for the love of learning. They're wanting to find out, what must I do to get an A so that my GPA is exceptionally high. And so part of what we really have to do is create a classroom where we are learning to be thinkers and not test takers. And so I've really tried this year and been very influenced by both of you to put in platforms that allow them to show me what they know in ways that are non-traditional. And that's what's so wonderful about teaching a STEM class is that um, it's not about how do you do on your weekly quiz. I do have to give normal assessments because we have a national exam. But as you can see in the pictures I put up here, I am teaching way beyond a test. I'm teaching them to problem solve and to think. And if you flip to the next slide, Karisa, one of the big things, you guys, that I've done this year, I push back, audience, I push back on Flip, and I push back. I knew Flip was being used in higher ed. I, I knew that Chris and Dayna were using it in their rooms. And I felt like, well, I just don't know how it would fit in mine. Well, when we did January New Attitude, try something different, I went to Flip. And I have to tell every educator out there, this is the greatest time saver I have used in my room. It allows me to assess them on a variety of things. There's things that because we don't have the time to ask every kid, tell me about your prototype, now they can make me a 30-second flip and I can determine they actually know how their prototype works. Not just I created this thing, or because sometimes, as you know, they get older and they're looking on the internet for a model to copy off of, and yet they don't even know how it works. So I have been using Flip consistently all spring. I'll never go back to anything else. I've started using it as well in my first year class with my screencasts. Because it is so easy to edit, they are more professional looking. Because I can cap the time, they have to be very concise in writing a good script. And then I always, always, always have always, will always, no matter what kind of product I'm getting back, whether it's a video or it's a Canva or it's a simple slideshow, I always give a rubric ahead of time so that they know what my expectations are on my end product. But in my end products I get now, because I'm layering using maybe like we created apps using slides like Karisa was saying, and then we layered it with them writing a script and talking about their app. I really get a good feel for how much they understand about the topic and who has participated. Because they write scripts for me, I can tell if they've written well without having to read it. And so Flip is wonderful because it's easy. You can scroll through them very quickly. In addition, and I'll talk about it a little bit later, we've really started using the feature where they comment and they can see each other's. So Dayna, what do you think? What do you want to add on Flip?
I was just going to say that one of the standards that I know we have in first grade, and I'm assuming in most grades, is that you need to be able to present on a regular basis and know how to talk about what you're doing. And Flip is such a great avenue for that, and also creativity. And you have to think a little harder, like, how can I be really descriptive? And then you also can bring in, like my friend that's doing hers on Oobleck. This little girl is repeating first grade. She struggles on a lot of different avenues, but she did so awesome in this video. I wanted to watch it over and over again because she wrote something special. She was very creative. She got to be dramatic. She got to showcase what she gained from playing with Oobleck and using her five senses. So it was so fun to watch some of these videos that we get off Flip. I just enjoyed it as much as you do.
Yeah, and I just feel like, the three of us share each other's flips all the time because we're just so amazed by the product we're getting from our kids and the thought and the empathy going into them. It just is an awesome tool. And back to what you said, Dayna, we're the same way. We have to do presentations, but in our curriculum, we have 215 days of curriculum to fit into 180 days. So I can't take 2 class periods to let every kid present. So this is fabulous. They present. We can take 10 minutes at the start of the next class and say, hey guys, I want you to watch 3 and leave comments. So what do you think, Karisa?
We even talked before about how it teaches kids about time management, right? So you set how long you want the video to be. And if you're going to give them 3 minutes, that's a hard deadline. So they may have to film a couple of times or do some practices before they submit their final product, which, it's real life. You may walk into an interview and they may say you have 15 minutes. So just being able to fulfill a requirement within a specified period of time. And it teaches them about like going back and rewatching themselves, right? And being kind of critical, like, I'm going to refilm that. I didn't realize how many times I kept repeating the same thing. So I love it for that. And obviously at the start of the year, you're going to get videos that then evolve, right? They're going to figure these things out on their own. And we kind of talked about this. There's this positive peer pressure where they know other students are going to see their video or give them feedback, or their teacher's going to watch it, or they never know when I'm sharing it with you guys. So there's this added pressure piece where they're not just filming some silly video for themselves. They're really taking some accountability because they don't know who's going to watch the video. Is it going to go to their parents? Am I going to be so proud that I sent it to the principal to watch? So it's just a wonderful tool. All in all, possibilities are endless with how you use it. We really can't say enough about it at all.
And they're intentional. They're so intentional about what they're going to say and do.
Yes. So Elaine, as we move in and talk about just rubrics and checklists and presentations and better feedback, I'll jump in the middle really quickly and then I'll hand it over to you. So one of my favorite things to do in the classroom, we have to give tests. We have to mirror what standardized testing is going to look like. It's a part of life. We have to prepare them for that. We don't want them to go in blind, but we also have opportunities for them to give feedback. And one of my favorite things to do in the classroom, I love using Google Forms. I love using Flip for feedback, but this is also a really great way for kids to practice their technical writing skills and to really reflect. So I ask questions like, hey, is there something during this lesson or unit that you wish we had more of? If you were a teacher, how would you change this? Or would you add something to it? What was your favorite part of this unit or lesson? What did you learn, right? What question did you have at the beginning that maybe now you don't have anymore? Rate how engaged you felt during this process. Reflect on your work. Rate yourself on the level of effort you gave. Is there something you need to improve upon the next time that we work in groups or you work solo on something? It's a great reflective time because, as Elaine said, we would love to sit down with every kid and have, this conversation back and forth asking all these questions, but we just don't have the time. But you know what? They can fill this out during the time that they would have taken a test. And now I'm taking a writing grade on it.
Yep.
And guess what? I'm going to walk past them and say, I am so glad that you loved the monster coding project we did. And I agree. I wish we had more time, and I'm having a conversation because I'm remembering the feedback that they gave about the project. And it's helping me become a better teacher because now I'm like, hey, all these kids said that they wanted a little bit more time to work on this project. So maybe next year I tweak it a little bit. So anyway, Elaine, talk about some of these rubrics and checklists you have.
Yeah, I have always been and will always be a believer that if you want a good product, you've got to give them parameters ahead of time. But super important, we don't pigeonhole their creativity. So although I have detailed things I want in their projects, I never really detail how I want them to come back to me. Sometimes I say, yeah, I want it to end with a flip video, but you can put this together how you want. And so sometimes I just need a checklist. So the big checklist there, that's how I check their mannequins. You guys have seen lots of pictures. We model on mannequins. I don't give them a grade for being awesome modelers. And actually what's kind of cool about this conference is the lady that designed the modeling, Starla, she's here. And I have kids that are like with the guru right now, learning how to model better. But then there's other things that I want them to build a model. And so I always give them a rubric because they want to, for the most part, my students want to give me a good product that will get a good grade. And so we have to really train them to read rubrics and to look at rubrics and how to understand them. And so I use a lot of rubrics. Every project I give has a rubric. Whenever I do writing samples, I often have a rubric. It helps me to grade them equally and fairly. But on the right hand side, you can see I took a little screenshot of Flip. We did 2 in a row app design projects. The first one, we had the kids design just a home screen, and we dropped it into into a Google Doc, and they left comment bubbles for each other. So then we used what people liked and didn't like to put together our apps, and they did those digitally. But then with those, we had them go back in, watch each other's presentations. They had to do a 2-minute flip explaining their app. And then the kids put in feedback to them. And so I thought that was so valuable. So kids can give great feedback. And then the bottom right, there's nothing wrong with the old fashioned. We go to talk about an experimental design they've written, and I just simply help fix it, right? So this is like old school, first draft, teacher helps with correcting so they can get it right for their final draft. So I just think if we give them good guidelines that allow them to be creative, we get fantastic work.
And you also mentioned stopping, like showing examples. I think we talked about that before together, is like when you have that rubric, you don't have to put an example in front of the room and hope that they do something with their own creativity. It's them, they have a guideline, and then they are creating their own piece.
That's right. And it kind of flows into this next, allowing multiple chances, right? So you continue to grow in the classroom, because in STEM we all do the design process, and it's a do-over, right? So we get to the end and it doesn't work, so we must rewrite, we must test again, or our prototype just falls apart on us. Oh my gosh, what are we going to do it again? And the three of us say all the time, that's real life, right? I mean, Karisa said just the other day when we were talking about this, I mean, our bosses never ask us to do it right the first time, or they fire us. And so why would we want that for kids?
And I think that's ideal with that rubric piece, is because then they say, okay, well, I didn't include this when I really thought I did. And then they can go and redesign or recreate,
right,
and add to it.
And what have we talked about over time, right? Some of the greatest inventions and novel ideas have come from failure. And so if we're going to recognize that, we have to also, practice what we preach. And that needs to be a part of the classroom, that, man, we tell them that I may introduce fractions and you may have a week with it, and that's just not long enough for you. And so I'm going to give you another chance, because that F in the grade book, is that really showing? That's totally knocking their self-esteem. And, when I give the same test a week later and you can get an A on it, then, man, that's all I care about. I need to know you understand the material so we can move on. And so allowing multiple chances for mastery just has to be the name of the game for us.
I think that flexibility on our end too, as we go into the next slide, is all these kids right here on that particular slide had second chances. They started with their design process. They realized that the prototype that they were working on was not going to work. They redesigned. You know what I'm saying? So, but also what I hear from a lot of people is, I don't have time to do a full design process. I don't have time to do this. Well, no one said you had to do it in one day, right? Say maybe one day you have 15 minutes to start the design process. Then you have the kids put that to the side. And then the next day you visit it again, and then they grow a little bit more, or design or work with their friend a little bit more on what they're doing. And then, you just give them a little bit of time all week long, and they add to it. It doesn't have to be a full meal deal in one day. One thing too that I think is so great is, if you're fostering that learning for love, is that your kids want to do it outside of school, or outside of that time that you've given them. And one thing that we see here is our kids are wanting to do it during recess. Like, my kids love doing Jamboard so much. We were doing the presidents, obviously, with George Washington, and I have kids making Jamboards like almost every indoor recess. They are so excited that we get to have an indoor recess so they can do a Jamboard or they can work on some kind of project online. And this little girl we did George Washington that day, and she was like, I'm going to make a jam about it. And so then we can review what we learned.
I love that. So just today, we were wrapping up our unit on coding and talking about circuits. And so we had some time with snap circuits, and a lot of the kids tried to create the project that utilizes an FM radio. And so we had a beautiful day, and they're like, can we please stay in and listen to our radio while we work? And so they had it like tuned. They were able to find some local stations, and they sat inside and like read or worked on a Jamboard, or some of them are just crafting, and they listened to their snap circuit radio. I'm like, you guys pop that up on your shoulder and go jam at recess, like have an old school boombox, but you're really just jamming to snap circuits. But that's the kind of joy that happened. Like, I didn't see that happening when I thought we were going to tinker with snap circuits today. I saw it being this 30-minute thing, and I bet 4 different groups of kids stayed in. And the middle picture here, we were playing euchre at recess the other day. We were learning about probability and studying different things in math. And so we attempted to teach the kids how to play euchre. And so they're like, is it too windy for euchre? We'll bring out the deck of cards today. And so you can see we're all like helping each other and looking at each other's hands. And the little girl next to me was like, ooh, Mrs. Schwanekamp. I'm like, I know, we're going to lose this game. So anyway, I just love that. They could be doing anything else, and they actually want to be around us, and they actually want to be doing things that extend what they've learned in the classroom. Just best day ever when that kind of stuff happens.
Yeah, in the last picture here, these are not my current students. These are the year 4 biomed students, and they have arrived. That's what I call them. They have arrived. I had them all as freshmen and sophomores, first and second year biomed, and every one of these kids is going on to a biomedical program in college. And sometime, probably in the middle of their junior year, every one of them kind of transition to loving learning for the sake of being prepared for college and to make sure that they get ready for the next level. And so for them, they're learning about things like CRISPR, and they use CRISPR in lab. They're learning how to take good data and statistics, and we're giving them the technical skills necessary. So I think we're ready for the next slide there, Karisa. Yeah, that's what I thought was there. We're approaching the end of season 1. We have one more live stream on May 8th. YaySTEM for all. We're going to kind of wrap up the year on this one. And then we are going to be part of the strengthening the core, Keep Indiana Learning this summer. We're excited for that one. You can always catch our live streams on our channel, on the Keep Indiana Learning channel. Just Google YaySTEM, and you can watch all of our episodes from season 1.
Thanks for being a part of our stream today or tuning in at some point. We love feedback so we know what direction to go next and how we can help others be more successful with STEM. So thank you so much. And then you'll see our ways to reach us through Instagram and Twitter here on this slide. And maybe we said something and you're like, hey, I need to smash. I need to join these types of programs together. Or, hey, I want to learn a little bit more about Flip or Jamboard or how your rubrics are used. And we would love to connect with you. So get on YouTube and take a picture of this and get with us and connect with us. We would love to talk to you. Have a great evening, and thank you for tuning in. Yay, STEM!
YaySTEM!
YaySTEM.
Go Karisa!
Thank you.